Okay, welcome everyone that's joined us here in council chambers. This is and those joining us from home, I should mention. This is the meeting of the Poquoson City Council for Monday, April 28th. And this meeting is now called to order. And if we could all please rise, we'll have an invocation and pledge of allegiance. Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the many blessings we have received as a city. In these difficult times and the difficult issues that Council will hear starting tonight, help us to truly listen to those who we serve, to gather their opinions, and try to put together and work together to put together a plan that works for all. We ask for your love and your presence for those who have lost family. Know that you are with them and that your hand is upon their shoulder. As always, we ask for a special blessing, that it be felt by those who serve our country in foreign lands, as well as those who serve our nation, our city, and our state through public service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'm going to start the meeting from over here this evening. I'm going to try not to close the computer and mess up all the things that we'll be going through. But it's a very great evening and a very great thing to start the meeting off with. And I received a phone call, and I greatly appreciated the phone call from the Girl Scouts of America to reward one of their own. And I will tell every citizen of Poquoson that this is a story of courage. This is a story of overcoming adversity. And this is a story of what a lot of adults think of as a gut check and making sure that they can follow through. So if the leaders from the Girl Scouts of America would join me up here, I would appreciate that. Okay, and joining us up here, I've received a great phone call from Marcy Dromanata, who's the community director. But we also have the CEO of the local Girl Scout, of all really the Girl Scouts, and that is Tracy Keller. And we have McKenna Phillips, and we appreciate you being here. And I'm sorry, ma'am.
Anne-Marie Jakes.
Okay. Anne-Marie Jakes, Girl Scout leader of the local troop, and thank you for all being here. What we have tonight to present is basically a dual thing, and McKenna is being recognized by the Girl Scouts of America, and that's number one here. But the city would also like to also recognize what you have done. So I'm going to read this resolution, and then the Girl Scouts are going to read their resolution, and I will award you, McKenna, and thank you for being here. Simply stated, this is Girl Scout Cadet McKenna Phillips, and we are calling this a Poquoson hero. Whereas while on a family boating outing on June 16th, 2013, McKenna Phillips' father, Kevin Phillips, suddenly and unexpectedly suffered a heart attack. And whereas while McKenna's mother and brothers performed CPR on Mr. Phillips, McKenna tried to reach medical help using her mother's cell phone. And whereas during this very stressful time, McKenna used the first aid skills she had been taught in Girl Scouts by remaining calm and doing all she could to comfort her 5-year-old sister while communicating the location of the boat to persons trying to respond to their emergency. Now, therefore, we, the members of Poquoson City Council, do hereby proclaim McKenna Phillips a true hero for her bravery, her calmness, and actions taken in aiding and assisting her father, during his fatal heart attack of June 16, 2013, and signed by all members of the Poquoson City Council.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Keller. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for the Girl Scout Council of Colonial Coast. McKenna Phillips, it is a great honor to have you acknowledged as a Girl Scout of Courage by the City of Poquoson and Mayor Hunt. You are being recognized with an award that has been part of the Girl Scout National Awards program from the beginning of our movement. The Medal of Honor is an award reserved for those who perform heroic acts beyond the degree of maturity and training expected at their age. You've demonstrated that the skills you gained while being a Girl Scout led you to act in a time of emergency that was well beyond expectation. You had the presence of mind to remain focused. You directed your attention on helping calm your younger sibling while attempting to connect with emergency medical support to assist your father. We know this has been a very difficult situation and that you continue to act in bravery by giving support to your mother and your siblings after the loss of your father. Your family, your community, and your fellow Girl Scouts commend you.
Okay, gentlemen and ladies. Thank you very much. Thank you for your help.
Congratulations, Phillips. That was a good job.
I should have introduced myself.
I'm very proud of you. Congratulations, everybody. Very proud of you. Congratulations.
I knew your dad when he was your age.
Very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, McKenna. Okay, another special presentation, which will pale in comparison, will be and I mean no harm by that, but Dan Norton of the VPI Extension Office. That's a tough act to follow. If you could please brief council on our upcoming project.
All right, well, thank you for having me tonight. So about a couple of weeks ago, one of my master gardeners called me and informed me that there was some issues at the Veterans Memorial Circle with some landscaping problems and some of the way it looked, and wanted some recommendations on improvement. So I took a trip out here about a week and a half ago, took a look at that, came out again, took some pictures, and came up with just some of the issues that I see out there and maybe some of the general recommendations we can make. So here's a picture of the site. As you can see, you have a beautiful memorial there for the veterans with the names and the cross there. You have those flags, which are great, but there are a number of issues there, and I have those listed there. And hopefully I'll be able to give you some recommendations on what I think will help improve this site overall and make it a better honor for those who are honored by that particular memorial. So some of the first issue is when we're doing this and we're approaching this, we really want to keep in mind that we're honoring those who served and who this memorial is for. One of the issues is that the hollies really block the view of the memorial. When you're coming up City Hall Drive, you really can't even see that that's a memorial there. You can kind of see the cross sticking out the top. And to be honest, I've made lots of trips to the library and done lots of programs here, and I hadn't fully seen the memorial till this issue came and I was able to go and step up and take a look at that. So it really does block the view of that particular memorial. The focus should be on that memorial and not on the plants in that spot. The plants should be sort of something that will increase the beauty of that site and accentuate it, but not be the focal point. Right now, those hollies are really just the focal point of this particular landscape area. So one of the solutions for this is we can choose plants that are going to stay a little smaller. Choose plants that are going to be planted in places and the types of plants that we choose that are going to accentuate that site rather than dominate that site, which is kind of what those plants are doing now. Another issue is the lights. The lights are designed to light those flagpoles and give it a more dramatic effect. Currently, those lights are being blocked by those hollies. They are too tall, and they just are blocking the full effect that those lights are supposed to have. So one of the solutions for these could be to plant low-growing plants in this area between the lights and the poles. So maybe choose some plants that are a little bit more low-growing, aren't going to get as big. Another option would be to plant things in between the light poles or plant things in areas that aren't going to actually ever impede that light. They're just going to grow in such a way that they're going to stay out of the way of that light with relatively low maintenance. One of the big issues here are those hollies. This is a Chinese holly. It has one of the sharpest leaves of all the hollies. It'd be great for a hedge between your house and a neighbor's house that you don't like, but in this particular instance, it's probably something that you want to avoid, especially since for some of the ceremonies you do have people presenting flags in this area and being impeded by those hollies. The hollies are really overtaking the site. Again, impeding those flag holders. They're over pruned. So what happens with hedges like this, plants want to get a certain size. It's in their DNA to be such a size. So when we plant a plant in the wrong spot, sometimes what will happen is we keep hedging that plant back year after year after year to try to control the size of that growth. With a plant like this, when you do that year after year, you get that really dense, thick growth in the outer 6 inches or so, and then inside that plant there's nothing green, and it's really dense growth. What happens then is you impede light and air penetrating that plant becomes unhealthy, and you get scale insects. Scale insects are a major pest of shrubs like this. They cause a sugary excretion called honeydew, which then turns into sooty mold, which is what you see here, and you can kind of see how the inside of this plant is black. That's due to that sooty mold. And that honeydew that they excrete also attracts bees and wasps and other stinging insects. So it's a multitude of problems when plants are overhedged like this, particularly in an area where you are going to have ceremonies and people in the summer, an example being Memorial Day. One of the solutions would be to replace it with a plant that isn't as spiny. There are soft touch hollies. There are lots of plants out there that you can rub your hands through without needing a Band-Aid. You can also choose a smaller plant or plant something that is going to remain smaller, not need to be hedged back as often. And also you could, if you wanted to stay with a shrub that's going to get very big, you just have to understand that you're going to get on maybe a 10-year maintenance cycle where you're going to take out the plants and replace them every 10 years or so they're not impeding those lights. They're not impeding on that hardscape as well. Here's a close-up picture of what also happens when we hedge those hollies. So let me just go back one here. You can see that they were hedged. This was after our initial site visit. They went back and hedged up there, and they did draw it back from that sidewalk area, which I'll talk about in a second. But if you look at the pruning job there, it's just not. It doesn't look very good. There's a lot of broken branch stubs there. That's never going to grow back to its full potential. It's never going to look very good, and it's certainly not going to be looking very good come Memorial Day. And here's sort of a close-up of that. You can see this branch stub here. You might get leaves growing, on this part of the branch or on that inner part of that branch, but that's always going to be a dead, broken stub of a branch. It is a little bit of a rough cut there, and that's going to allow disease issues and other problems with that plant as well. And a lot of times when we see this issue, these branches will just die, and they'll always be dead, and they'll eventually have to be pruned out of that plant. Another issue at the site was the liriope. When we did the initial site visit, it was overgrown and it really hadn't been maintained. Since then, they have gone in and cut that back, and it does look 100% better. So I think liriope is a good choice for that area. But after cutting it back and pulling out the weeds, there are a few bare spots, which you can see here and there. Liriope is a very tough plant. It's very easy to split, so that easy solution for that would be to just split some of the plants that are there and just spread them around a little bit, and then they'll kind of retake over. And then maintain annual or biannual maintenance of the loriope, cut them back once a year or once every 2 years just to maintain the beauty of that particular plant. But you do have a good ground cover there. It is pretty much serving its purpose. It just needs a little bit more maintenance than what it was getting before. The hardscape is also an important part of this site. This is a picture I pulled off of Google Maps, which I think is free and open source, so I don't think there's any copyright issues there. But this is before the pruning happened, and you can see that circular area with that cement really is part of that landscape. It accentuates the site. It kind of holds everything together. And before the pruning happened, that holly was really growing over that hardscape. After having it cut back, you can kind of see where that dark line is there. You had a good 6 to 10 inches of growth over that sidewalk, and you're really taking away from the overall purpose of the site. So the solution to this would be to choose plants that aren't going to overgrow the site, plant them in an area or further back so they either takes longer for them to get there, or that you're not going to have to be constantly hedging them in order to keep them where they want to be. And then another thing that we briefly mentioned is part of this hardscape could become a seating area for people that maybe want to visit this site but aren't as mobile and can't stand and read the names, but maybe want to sit and contemplate the importance of this site. And if we think about the hardscape overall, we can start planning for that sort of thing sometime in the future. So overall, our goals short term really is with Memorial Day in mind. Cutting back the loriope was the first thing we said, and that's been done, and again, that looks great. It looks 100% better. It looks like it's maintained, and I think it's going to look really good in the next couple of months. Removing the hollies is really probably the best bet for those plants. Like I said before, plants want to be a certain size, and if we keep hedging those plants again and again and again, they're going to get unhealthier, they're going to have that really dense growth, and I don't think you're going to be happy with the long-term result. With the short term in mind, in order to make it look good for Memorial Day, you can plant some annuals. One of the pieces of information that I've given to the city is this. It's called America's Anniversary Garden. This was a big push in 2007 that was to commemorate the 400th year of Jamestown. But basically, they have a plant list that include red, white, and blue plants, which I think would be very appropriate for a site like this. And that will, putting some annuals in the area where the hollies will really spiff up that site and make it look really good for Memorial Day. For long term, we want to look at replacing the hollies with smaller perennials that are going to fit that site. They're going to be safer there as far as the sharpness of those spines and all of that. We also want something that's relatively low maintenance. We don't want to get you into something where this is going to cost you, thousands of dollars. Now, we want to be able to honor the site, but keep it low maintenance so that it looks good and it doesn't get away from us again. Another thing that could potentially be done is put it in a rotation of annuals to keep it beautiful throughout the year. This will allow you to put different plants in there, different colors, and keep it nice throughout the year. And then we also want to maintain the integrity of that hardscaping, not let those plants overtake that hardscaping again. And also, we want to know what your needs and what your plans and wants are as far as that's concerned. A lot of that's going to come down to maintenance and how much maintenance you want to allow there, and also the cost overall of some of these issues. Here's a picture of the America's Anniversary Garden. I have a few handouts here if you'd like to see it, but it basically has a lot of different plants that are red, white, and blue, and I think even though it's an older initiative for extension, it still, I think, is very applicable to a site like this because of the color scheme. Replacing the hollies, we talked about possibly something thin, so I used my terrible non-Photoshop skills to take these pencil hollies. These probably wouldn't get this tall, but maybe planting a plant that's going to give a columnar or look like columns in that site to sort of make it look nicer, give it the honor that it deserves. There are a number of plants. These are pencil hollies, thuja, which is a large evergreen shrub that will get tall but aren't going to grow out and cover those lights, so that is going to solve that issue as well. You could also grow something low growing like boxwoods will tend to stay smaller. They grow much slower, and they also tolerate heavy pruning much better than the hollies do. Junipers are an option. They are low growing. over a long period of time, junipers tend to kind of look messy and unkempt, even if you do a lot of maintenance on them, but that is an option. And then Abelia is another plant. But when we get to this state where we're going to redesign this, there are all kinds of options, and we'll definitely be able to guide you in that matter as well. Rotating annuals, I mentioned this as an option for the long term. Basically, this allows for color throughout the season. It allows you to use a variety of plants. I've heard mention of wanting different colored plants, maybe some poppies at some time, but something that we can rotate out of there to make it look nice. That's going to be relatively low maintenance. What we have here is basically a pot in the ground that's kind of dug into the ground, and all you have to do is pull out the old annual and pop in the new one. It's a quick job, relatively low cost, and it's going to look really great if you do something like this. It's going to add that interest, and it might catch people's eye and bring them to the memorial to maybe look at the plants, and then they are there seeing the memorial and giving that memorial the honor it deserves. That's all I have officially, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that you may have about this presentation. And of course, contact information is there. I'm always available by phone or email if you have any follow-up questions or want any other information.
Questions of council?
Just a comment. I'm glad to see that being done. My stepfather is on that memorial. He was killed when I was 7. And riding by and never being able to see their name has always been very disappointing. So I'm certainly appreciative of this endeavor.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say thank you to Dan and the Master Gardeners and the folks from the Legion that have been helping us with this. We know this is important, which is why we have not acted in a hasty manner. We needed to deal with issues of lighting, and yeah, we could move the lights back, but the effect of going up the pole goes away when you do that. We needed to deal with the issue of the internal portion of the circle. Dan said that there were areas where it was 8 to 10 inches. I would challenge him that there were some where it was 2 feet.
I was being optimistic.
Yeah,
so.
Literally 2 feet, particularly on the left if you looked out the window. So that was an issue, and we did trim it back so that you could see what that looked like before we did anything else. And we know this is an important site. There is no site more important. So I think what they've come up with is a really good plan which honors the site and makes the best use of it. Yeah. But before we made any alterations, we wanted a chance to explain to the community what we were doing, both in the short term and the long term, and also share it with you so that if you had significant concerns about it, now would be the time to tell us rather than us doing something that would be very difficult to take back.
I just think it's great that city groups are taking care of their monument, and that's what's so impressive to me. So I'm sure that council will listen to the final ideas and give you any feedback. I think we're stepping off the ledge here, but it sounds to me like a great plan, and I look forward to putting it in place.
Thank you, sir. Get another investment return from that Master Gardeners program.
Yes, thank you. And again, thank you for your continued support of Extension.
Okay. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
All right, move on in the agenda for the evening. The next item on the agenda is an audience for visitors. This audience is for those who may wish to address council on any subject. In particular, we would like to remind you that we have a public hearing on the budget. If your concerns are related to the budget, we'd ask for you to defer those comments until that public hearing. But now is the time to address council on any issue. Seeing none, I'll close the audience for visitors and ask for approval of the minutes by City Council.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 14, 2014.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting of April 14th. Questions or comments? None. Judy, please.
Councilman Ayer.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Vernal.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay. And the work session?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt the minutes of the work session of the same day, April 14, 2014.
Second.
A motion made and seconded that we adopt those also. Questions or comments of council? Not. Judy, please.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Vernal.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Ayer.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing, and that public hearing is based on the proposed fiscal year 2014-2015 annual financial plan and tax levies and fees. This will be our first reading. If you joined us at home or here for the previous work session, it's very much the same subject. But this is your chance to weigh in. I know that Randy will have a short presentation. We've seen presentations to council in weeks past, so should not. And I know that the press has done a couple stories on the proposed budget. So this should not be the first time you hear about it, but this will be a refresher or basically a high-level overview. Well, then, because council has had the opportunity to discuss this, I'm going to go straight to the public hearing before opening up to council for comments. Questions will be entertained, but as far as comments, we'll hear from the public at that time, and then we'll get into any kind of council discussion. So, Randy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members of council, you have been through this with me on several occasions, and I'm going to try to be brief this evening, primarily to share with those people that may be with us tonight or watching on TV the backdrop of this budget. This may be the first time that they've joined us for this discussion this year, and so I'll just take a few minutes to set the stage. As council will recall, we begin the budget every year with a look at sort of where we are when we start. So this is sort of the first day of budget development. And as council will recall, in the current year's budget, we had a relatively modest size gap in the budget between ongoing revenues and expenses that was funded through a limited use of your fund balance in excess of your guidelines. That money needed to be replaced as we go into the 15 budget, either with continuing use of fund balance or some other way, which could also have been a reduction. What we determined that while we were seeing revenue growth, that the revenue growth was insufficient to cover the deficit, particularly as it pertained to certain embedded costs like VRS increases and other things. As we started the year, as we have in years past, there was no money going in, local money going into the capital maintenance, capital improvement, capital replacement program. The school system, as we discussed in work session, was looking at a sort of a net budget gap in its own budget of about $450,000. And as we've known for a couple of years, next year is the first of a two-step increase in our debt service payments, which will ultimately be $900,000 once we get to the second year. But the first year's step up is two-thirds of that, $600,000 approximately, and that is attributable to the elementary school and fire station number 1. So that's how we started. Working with you, working with the staff, we focused on 4 focus areas in the budget: addressing the operational budget gap, the school's budget gap, our capital improvements plan, which was the subject of a detailed work session about a month ago, and the continuing impacts of both reductions that we've made, both we and the schools for the past several years, and the projected continuing impact of those going into the future. We came up with, following your guidance coming out of your budget retreat, to get right to it. The discussion of the retreat focused around all of those issues I just listed, and the council determined that for the purposes of this recommended budget, we certainly couldn't solve all of those things, but focused instead on solving the structural deficit to include the schools so that we could decrease our reliance on limited reserves and set ourselves on a basis to continue essentially the current government, which has already been cut substantially, as you know, over the last 5 years, but to continue it into the future. So we utilize, the recommended budget utilizes the natural revenue growth, a proposed increase in the real estate rate to address the structural deficit, in the general fund in both fiscal years 15 and 16. That's a 7-cent recommended increase and 1 cent for schools. There are no other changes in rates or fees with the exception of a proposed reduction in the solid waste fee, which I'll talk to in a minute. And in addition to that, coming out of your retreat, $300,000 from our reserve fund to make up balance between that 1 cent and that $450,000 budget gap that the schools were facing. All of that rolls into a total budget of $26,688,686. This budget represents several moves forward in my view. First, in no particular order, but first for presentation, as you'll recall a few years ago, we went to Wall Street with a financial plan that was the foundation of our enhanced credit rating. That credit rating saved us significant money in terms of refinancing and lowered the total cost of our debt, while at the same time giving us some flexibility to get out of the recession. We went there and we said, we know where we are now. This is our fiscal position, and over several years, we're going to do the following things to emerge from the recession. Council will recall 2/3 of those things were done in the first year, because that's what we said we would do. That's what you did. And then we represented to them that we would complete the following third in the next couple of years beyond that. Well, this is the last step in executing that plan. This is a foundational step towards a future decision on the middle school before you can ever think about what you may wish to do more in the future. You have to deal with your current budget, and this budget does that. While there is not a pay increase associated or new positions associated with this budget, I think it sends a strong signal to our employees, particularly, both school and city employees, about the continuity of government. The structural deficit is eliminated. We may not have money to invest in the short term in new things or compensation adjustments, but the continued operation of the government is substantially helped by the essential element of this budget. And in future years, with a structurally based budget, then we can have a conversation about should new monies be available, what should they be invested in? And that's a future year issue. This budget, if you approve it, will, for the first time since the recession began, help the school system in that they will not actually have to go negative. You recall city councils, every year throughout the recession, you have increased local funding. And every year, the amount of state funding reduction has far surpassed what you could do to help make up for it. This time, with this budget, the school system budget remains solid and will not have to reduce positions for the first time since the recession began. And as you'll recall, 50.5 positions have been eliminated by the school division so far. This budget sets us up to meet our debt service obligations, both now and into the future. The debt service schedules are for the current debt. The schedules are set. We know what our obligations are. And by doing it in this manner, what we do is we hopefully eliminate our ability to have to go yet another penny on the tax rate in the future to pick up the end. We want to marshal our resources so that we don't have to do that. This does that. As I said, this budget includes no employee compensation increases or new positions, but you can't underestimate the importance of dealing with the budget gap. That is essential. And lastly, as it relates to the general fund, because the budget is presented structurally balanced, it gives you increased flexibility to use your one-time reserves for one-time uses. In addition to the $300,000 that the budget contains to go to the school division, there is $516,000 proposed in the budget from that reserve fund for a total then of $860,000 use to reserve, and this is for items in our capital improvement plan that we have just not been able to get to. Things such as bus replacement. We haven't bought a new bus in quite a while, and you'll recall from the work session the age of the fleet. A police car, engineering support relating to the federally unfunded TMDL mandate, and redecking for the Rennes Road Pier, which has gotten to the point that if we don't do something with it soon, our other option is to close it. And we certainly don't want to do that. A small investment in some things that have been sitting by the wayside for several years. The next slide shows you the single biggest monetary driver in the budget, and this is the debt, and I've referenced before for the elementary school and the fire station. This is its impact coming online. You see the changes. The city pays both the school debt and the city's debt, but you see them presented here just so you have a sense of what the relative size of each one is to the other. As I mentioned, this budget includes some limited money for capital improvements, which is the next slide. I think I hit on the major points there. If you go on to the next one, Teresa. I did mention the proposal in the budget for reduction in the solid waste fee of 7%. You'll recall a few months ago you approved entering into a new contract which will change how we do recycling through us and our neighbors under the VIPSA contract, and it saved us considerable money. And we told you at that time we hope to return that in the form of a reduction, and it's here. Lastly, as it relates to, almost, the utility funds, the good news here is we are where we thought we were. There's no rate change proposed or anticipated in the coming short term anyway. With this budget, we will pay off the balance of the Pump Station 2 note, and the costs associated with the sanitary sewer consent order are still, I won't say they're unknown, but because they are sort of formed out, but as the consolidation agreement, the regional consolidation agreement, has been recently inked and is still actually working its way through finalization, some of the costs associated with that will be borne by HRSD, some by us. And so what's unknown is what is that mix, and we will continue to work on that. I am hopeful that someday that will result in an ability to pare down that rate. But until such time that we know the cost, I can't tell you that we may not have to increase it sometime in the future. So right now we're taking a wait and see on that, and by this time next year we'll have a very good sense of how that's going to go. Two more slides. This one was the main focus of our conversation with the school board, and for those that are at home that were not watching at the time, the red line is state support of education in Poquoson. The blue line at the bottom is local support for the operating budget. The green line in the middle is local support for the operating budget plus local support for school debt. What you'll see is just a few years ago, the state was the major player at about a 60-40 split, and you see in a very short time, it's pretty much 50-50 at this point. And if you look at that trend, you'll see that while the City Council has increased funding every year, we just can't keep up with the rate of decline coming at us out of the state budget. And that has necessitated the $5 million worth of reductions the superintendent referred to earlier. And the elimination of more than 50 positions. That's, despite your best efforts, that's what's been required. This budget, at least for this moment in time, should you approve it, will stop that trend in FY15. And this is what we affectionately refer to as the mayor's slide. And essentially, the purpose of showing you this slide, the red line is tax rates since 2004, real estate tax. The blue line is total governmental expenditures, and there are a couple of things, not trying to steal your thunder, Mr. Mayor, but the idea is when we could afford it, the tax rate went down. When the recession came, you can see the recession if you really look at that blue line. You can see we needed to tighten our belt, and we certainly did. And once that initial belt tightening, we've maintained a level budget. Despite variations in the tax rate, the budget has remained essentially level up until this year. And the issues we're talking about is the school system funding and the debt. Those are the things that make that blue line a little bit higher. But essentially throughout the recession, we have remained essentially level at a reduced rate of expenditure. And with that pretty much concludes my presentation.
Okay.
Teresa, you want to back up one slide?
Yeah.
Folks may wish to speak to that one.
Okay, questions on basically the presentation. I know we'll get to our comments after the public hearing. Okay, sounds like we've all heard it 10, 15 times now, but the story doesn't get any better every time we hear it. So with that said, I'm going to open the public hearing. This is your chance as citizens of the city to let council know, what you feel about the budget, what you feel about, the challenges that you see, and let us know, where adjustments are necessary. So I'm going to open that public hearing and ask if anybody in the audience would like to speak about the budget. Yes, ma'am. I think they were all waiting for you.
Oh, waiting for me.
If you could just let us know your name and where you live.
Okay. My name is Monica White, and I live on Hunts Neck Road. I was not able to come when the boat tax thing was dealt with, but I'm here to voice my displeasure with that, especially in light of our budget. I don't own a boat. I would love to own a boat. Grew up on one. But in my budget in my household right now, that's not really an option, because when I buy something recreational, like a camper that I used to have, I know I'm going to have a tax associated with it. That's my choice to do that. It's not fair to choose a winner and a loser. You raise the tax on everybody for their house, but we're having our boaters skate free. And most of them are recreational. And most of them you see driving around Poquoson are expensive boats. That's a lot of money that's going out on our waterway, not coming into our city. If you want to replace the decking on Wrens Road, boat tax could do it. It could also go into our schools. But I don't think it's fair you got people with campers getting taxed at $1.50 per hundred. I don't know what the tangible personal property, machinery, and tools, but that's $4.15 per hundred. My assumption would be a lot of people use that to make their living, machinery and tools. I think of home improvement, things like that. So I just think there shouldn't be people chosen to pay taxes and people not chosen to pay taxes, especially when it's a recreational or a luxury item. You choose to own it, you know you got to pay the tax for it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, then I'll close the public hearing and ask for consideration and discussion by council.
Mr. Mayor, given that this is our first reading and that it can change when we visit this again on May the 12th, I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution approving the adoption of the proposed FY 2014-15 annual financial plan for the city of Poquoson to include the minor changes that Randy gave us at our work session, and to make the following changes in section 2A, instead of $1.05, $1.07. In 2C, the same thing, change the $1.05 to $1.07, and that we designate that 2 cents to the school system and not use the $300,000 out of our emergency fund to make their budget whole.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we do this. I'll remind everybody at home, because council's getting ready to discuss this. I'll remind everybody at home that this is the first reading, and that the first reading is not the final adoption of the budget. But it's basically gives you at home and for those joining us in the audience where council is right now. So we have a couple weeks before we'll have the second reading. And council right now, from the motion that's been said, I'll let everybody kind of go through their thought process before we take a preliminary, what I call a preliminary vote, because it's non-binding. But so who would like to start? Dr. Vernal, would you like to bring it on around?
The use of the reserve fund, while it is a way to resolve the budget, we have such a pent-up demand for capital projects, not only what's already on the table, but things that we know are coming down the road, such as roofs and AC systems. I would feel happier knowing that that money was there in the event we had an emergency or just responsible maintenance that we need to do on our facilities, both school and city. So that was the reason that I would support the using an additional 2 cents to fund the school rather than taking it out of the reserve.
Okay. Councilman Gray?
Well, that's for the same reason, and it's an ongoing expense. It's not a one-time thing, which is what the unappropriated fund balance is intended for. If we take it out of the unappropriated fund balance, we're setting the school system up to be in the same position next fiscal year. We're going to have to either take it more out of the unappropriated fund balance, and they're going to be dealing with a shortfall again in their budget, whereas if we take care of it once and for all, they don't have to worry about that. They can worry about how irresponsible the General Assembly is going to be next year and how much they're going to cut them again. But I'm a firm believer in fixing the problem one time, and I think this does it. To use our emergency fund, like Dr. Bernal said, if we have an emergency and we've taken that $300,000 out, we're closer to the 15% that we've got to keep in there, and I think we're wiser to fix the problem, even though I am not for raising taxes ever. But we've got a structural imbalance where we're not taking in enough money for what the basic cost of running this city, and we're also facing a shortfall in the school systems that's going to keep recurring. So this way we'll fix both of those once and for all and not have to worry about them again.
Okay. Councilman Eric.
First of all, I do appreciate Ms. White's comments. We talk about the emergency fund, and I know it's almost to an emergency point where we are. Having said that, if we lose a couple school buses or a grader goes down or something of that nature goes and we can't get to the emergency fund because we've loaned it out, we're in a situation that would not be very comfortable. So I appreciate what Dr. Bernal and Mr. Green are talking about. Having said that, I'm concerned about the no additional employee compensation. I would like to hear some additional feedback from the community. I have heard feedback from the community on the tax increase we're talking about now. They understand what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I would like to hear some additional feedback on the direction Buddy's talking about, and also additional employment compensation for our schools, our public works, the city, just to get some more feeling on that. I think we have a great system. We have great employees. And I've talked to a couple of folks about that in the last few weeks, but I would just like to get some more feedback on that. Do I think we're talking a 10-cent tax increase to get us out of the hole so we stop kicking the can? And I don't like taxes any more than the next person, but is that enough is my question. So that's my concern.
Okay. Vice Mayor.
Well, I'm going to approach this a little bit differently. The 8 cents is going to cost about $240 a year. 10 cents cost around $300 a year. That's $20 or $25 a month additionally from what you already pay. we have already taken, I shouldn't say that, we already have the $300,000 that we collected this year. That's in excess of our, as we call it, reserve fund. Can you tell me how far over? What is our percentage?
I can tell you the number easier than I can tell you the percentage.
Oh, okay.
Teresa may be able to tell you the percentage.
Oh, there's Teresa. Okay, I was looking for her.
Teresa, if you're gonna address the question, please come up.
The amount's a little over $1.3 million on 14 adopted budget and a little over $1 million on the 15 proposed budget. And it's about, 16%, 17, somewhere along those lines.
And our threshold
Is 15.
is 15%. Okay.
So we elected amongst ourselves, we voted on retaining 15% for emergencies, such as a school bus or a grader or a hurricane.
Not quite.
No?
Can I address that?
Yeah, go right ahead.
The 15%, in addition to being a foundational guideline for public debt, in this city is almost exactly the amount you need for cash flow purposes. So if we were at any time to deduct below 15, very quickly, we get to the point where we need to wait for some more money to come in before
we would need to do short-term projects.
Yeah, we might like to do that.
And why don't you expand on that so that everybody at home understands? When we say 15%, you ebb and flow through the year. Basically, you outflow all except for 2 months of the year. Okay, and on those 2 months, if you did not have that fund, you would have to do a short-term financing to make up the difference, which would cost the taxpayers the amount of the interest. So,
in addition to significantly impacting our debt rating.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, but we're not going to keep, thanks. We're not going to keep this $300,000 that we have now. We're going to spend it some way that's so far unspecified because 8 cents meets what the school asks for as well as what the city asks for. And if we need another penny or two next year, I think we can convince the citizens that we do. But if we're sitting here with $300,000 in excess of, quote, in the bank, I'm just not sure going out and saying we want to raise it 2 cents is the best thing to do. I just think it's a better approach, and that's staying with what was requested by both the city schools and the city manager. That's my opinion. Also, Councilman Ayer said something about pay raises. Well, a resident of the city that gets a pay raise with the tax increase is going to actually lose money because the assessment is more than what they're going to get for the pay raise. And that's another problem. We need to be able to raise the pay without raising the tax, because the tax is going to cost, especially in the case of school teachers. I had 3 school teachers talk to me about, don't do that to me again, please. So we need to look at that carefully. Our teachers are probably, I think of my chart, I believe the lowest paid around this general area. The reason they stay here, well, I won't go into that. I think they are the lowest paid, but we would have to raise it very significantly or we're penalizing our residents. Now, people that don't live in Poquoson will get a pay raise.
Most of those are paying a higher tax rate anyway.
Say again?
Most of those are paying a higher tax rate anyway.
Well, could be. But anyway, I don't support a dime when it gets around to voting on it.
Well, just to be clear, there are no pay raises in that dime. There are no pay raises in our budget. What Henry was talking about was raising it even further than a dime. Right. There are no pay raises in this budget.
That's
and there are no pay raises associated with the 10 cents.
Understand,
the 10 cents just,
that was my wishful thinking.
The 8 cents does not cover what the school board needs. We've taken $300,000 out of the unappropriated fund balance to meet what the school board needs.
Right. But that's money we already have.
It's money
That
you
we've
already
already
have for an
taken from
emergency.
citizens.
The 15% that we set, like Randy says, is cash flow, and it also has a big impact on how the bonding companies look at us. We go below that, our bond rate changes to the negative.
Understand. Okay. But we have about $1 million over the 15%, according to what Teresa just said.
Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right, Bud?
Yeah, I got a few words, and I'm going to try to get it in perspective. I don't want to increase taxes at all. Unfortunately, I think that it is necessary. We really have 1% to play with, absolutely, with the emergency fund, because if we get down below the 15%, then there's a couple of times during the year, because the revenue comes in twice a year, we don't get enough money to pay the city's bills. And in that case, we go in the hole, because the city has a very small budget. And if we go in the hole and we have to borrow money to pay the bills, then in that case, the borrowing of the money increases the citizens' debt by having to pay the interest on that money. And Ms. White, I seriously appreciate you being here tonight and your opinions on that, that you gave us. And you make some valid points. But I'll tell you that we debated long and hard before we did away with the boat tax. If we put a boat tax on the pier, or put a boat tax back, it probably would not pay for the pier. The whole reason we reduced the boat tax was to get the boats here to Poquoson. Poquoson is a seafaring city. We depend on the maritime industry. And what happened was, when we had taxes on boats, and neighboring cities didn't, and the boats simply went there. And by reducing the taxes on boats, the boats came to the city, then the boats buy fuel in the city, the people who own the boats came to the city, the restaurants sold more food, and those revenues helped pay some of the bills that made up for the difference in the boat taxes. The restaurant down at the marina is doing very well. There's talk of new businesses going across the creek to do boat maintenance. That will provide new jobs in the city, and it will also provide tax revenue in the city. And so overall, your taxes would go down because we don't have that boat tax. We put a boat tax back, the boats will go away, those businesses won't show up across the creek, those jobs won't exist, and we'll pay more for it. It was a hard thing to do. We did it in a two-step process, and it took us a couple of years to do that. The other thing is, if you look carefully at that budget, and I've been through it a couple of times and told Gene that I want to sit down and have some conversation with him, we do not have a capital improvements project. Not many businesses or organizations don't plan for things to break. And they plan on do things like program maintenance and predictive maintenance to try to keep the costs down by doing corrective things at the right times. And we have zero programs for that. Just don't have it at all. It's not a good situation to be in. And so I don't want to do this tax. I'm retired. My spendable income has gone down. My health insurance has gone up, thanks to the help of a lot of people I don't care for. And I think it's necessary to do this tax. And so when time comes around to it, I'll probably vote for it. I don't want to. And the people that I've talked to, that I've gone around while I'm trying to get the votes to get my name back on the petition for next year, everyone without exception so far has understood. And so I don't want to do it either. The boat tax was a necessary thing that we took on in a 2-year process, and we did it slowly to see if it was paying off. As the taxes went down, the boats came in, we started selling fuel, people started coming to the restaurant, people who owned the boats came to the city. And now when we took the boat tax all the way away, there's new businesses talking about coming in across the creek. And so I think we're trying to do things the right way and the smart way. I don't want to do what we're getting ready to do, but I will probably go for it.
All right. I'll kind of finish this up, and I know I talked a lot during the school board thing, but I'm going to I'm going to start by taking this out of the negative and putting it on the positive. Council, when they adopt a budget, they feel the pain too. Believe me, there's not a day that goes by that we don't. I know what it means for my household, and and I know that some of the other members of council will pay substantially more based on the value of their homes. Taxing is something that we take very seriously, and there are good reasons for other things. This is not a debate. There's no conversation or anything else about boat tax in this budget. That was in and done, and that was a whole debate of itself. And so that doesn't impact today's conversation. I appreciate the comments and the opinion, but it's not a conversation that's pertinent for the evening. So I don't want to focus on that. What I want to focus on is that chart. And if anybody thinks that this council can solve that red line by adopting anything other than a tax increase, we are welcome to hear your suggestions. But that state spending on education, there should be a whole lot more people contacting their state representative about where their tax dollars are going for the state and why they are spending $3 million less on our schools in the city of Poquoson. Now take that to every locality in the Commonwealth and start to ask yourself, are you upset with this council for paying the bills of the city? Are you upset with the state for not paying their bills and yet standing up new programs? We had one that was, I suggested to council last night, unfunded and unpledged mandates that are passed down from the state to the city, from the federal government to the city. We're simply the guys at the bottom of the totem pole that pay the bills. So with that, what I would like to focus on is what City Council has done. 2-3 years ago, when we began this process and we went for that bond rating and we got a AA+, we told everybody what our plan was. 2 years ago, we took care of the solid waste fund. Now tonight, because we took care of the solid waste fund, Randy's reporting basically the ability to decrease the solid waste fund because we brought that fund into balance. We've also had some unique ideas about how to do things better that the recession was good for. The pickup is the weekly pickup in the back of City Hall is a great example of how we can do things more efficiently, and things like recessionary pressure make you understand that there are always different ways to do things. We also balanced, and council may have forgotten, the Parks and Rec Fund. The Parks and Rec Fund was a red fund where we were dumping money into it constantly, and we brought it under the shelter of the general fund. So we did away with Parks and Rec funding independent and brought it in so that we could handle Parks and Rec funding as one broad sweep. We took on the course of economic development, and economic development brought on the discussion of, are we doing things that enable us to compete with our neighbors? And that was what bore the discussion 2 years ago on the start of the boat tax. Can you compete with Hampton with a zero thing and be on the other side of the creek?
In Norfolk and Virginia Beach.
And Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And now I think that that's starting to pay dividends. This year, it's the general fund. Okay, so we have straightened up the solid waste fund, Parks and Rec fund. We've taken on economic development, and we are about to balance the general fund. And that's very important point, and kind of goes along with what the motion on the table is this evening. If we were to take the $300,000 out of the unappropriated fund balance, and if you could come back up to the podium, I'd like to go back to slide number 1, where you said what your initial issues were. Back to your initial issues.
How about that?
Fiscal year 2014 budget gap. That $295,000 was something that we pulled out of the unappropriated fund balance last year and paid for. And so guess what? If you do it again, then next year you start with a $300,000 gap. And you haven't truly solved the fiscal shortfall. So you're basically saying if we keep doing what we're doing, which is spending money for recurring expenses by pulling it out of the savings account, then you're always going to be trying to make up $300,000 every year. So that, I think, is what's behind the feeling of council that we would just like to solve this and reset our finances. Now let me address the Vice Mayor's comments, and he's dead on. City's responsibility is not to tax your money and save it. Our unappropriated fund balance is a little high, okay? But it's not absorbently high. We talked about how the cash flow comes and goes. We have been putting off since 2008 purchase of very bare necessities such as school buses, such as police cruisers, such as, I really can't say because of the help of the volunteer fire department that the fire department has gotten new vehicles. But there are other needs. Public works we haven't touched in years. Okay, so I would tell you that there are many, many one-time projects that we should use people's money for to replace before we have to finance them again. I am all about no more debt. Simply, like I said, simply stated, this council has done what they said they would do. We told the bond rating agencies, we've done what we said we were going to do. We told the citizens, we've done what we said we were going to do. So go back to the last chart, the mayor's chart. You love that mayor's chart.
I did.
And what I would tell you is, look at the red line at the start and look at the red line at the finish. Okay, yes, we battled a recession. When, that great thing that we all heard in 2008, which was the real estate bubble. Remember the real estate bubble? Okay? You can see the effects of the real estate bubble and how the city responded to that. We could have left that tax rate up there at $1.12 and said, you know what? Boy, we'd have been cash rich in the city, but that wasn't the right thing to do. So look at the decrease in tax rate to offset that, and look at our level of spending that shows where we are fiscally. Then the real estate bubble collapsed. Okay, the values weren't truly what they said they were going to be. The city responded. We left those tax rates flat, and we decreased our spending even more. So, and then we stayed relatively flat, and look at the tax increase to stay relatively flat. So we haven't spent any more money as a city in those many years, so that's 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, and now finally we've said enough is enough on the school system, state. While you can't get your act together, we're going to have to carry our school systems. And we're saying that to carry those school systems and that school debt, we need to go up on your taxes a little bit. That's the story that slide tells, is that the city of Poquoson has never gone after people's money just to have it. Now the following slide, the other slide, Randy's favorite slide.
That's mine.
I'm going to go back and I'm going to say this one more time. The city of Poquoson, with those flat spending things that we had just showed, has been able to increase spending to its schools while maintaining a steady, flat spending line. Okay, we didn't increase your taxes, we didn't do anything different. Now compare that to the state. Did y'all get a refund check this year? Okay? Did you pay less in taxes this year to the state than you paid last year? So where's the $3 million? We're going to pay our bills, and I think this is a positive thing. I think that's the thing about having a city council that you can see in Farm Fresh. You know, you can tell us what you think, and we're going to do the best job that we can with the 7 of us. There's hundreds of people in that red line, and they're not solving the problems of the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. That's it. So, with that said, are there any other comments?
We got a question more than a comment. Councilman Southall brought up about us used to going down to about zero in the fund balance, and that's when we raised it to whole 15%. Have we been down to zero since we put in that 15%, or do we just approach it?
Down to zero in excess?
No, down to zero in the budget.
Less than 50%?
We were right at 15% in 2009, I think.
No,
I mean in our daily operations, like in June and in
have you ever had
December.
Have you ever run out of money?
No, not in the last 3 years, no.
Correct.
Okay.
Since we set the 15%.
Right, so at 15% is covering our normal operations pretty well?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. Okay, so this 300,000 is in excess of our quote savings account.
That's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, anything else? If not, we'll go ahead and take a preliminary vote. This is a first reading, so it's non-binding.
I have a procedural problem.
Okay.
By adopting a resolution, there is no first and second reading. So if you take the vote, that is a final vote on the resolution. So I would suggest to take a first reading on the 2 ordinances that set the tax rates, and then bring those back next time.
Great.
Might I suggest a friendly amendment to the motion, providing guidance to the staff with regard to preparation of the documents for next time?
That's good.
No.
So amended.
And the second?
Second.
Got it, okay.
Okay. All right. So the motion now is we're voting on directing staff to prepare the documents to adopt it with 3 cents going to the school instead of 1. Okay. That's the only delta. Okay.
Total rate of a dime as opposed to 8.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. All right, Councilman Green?
Aye.
Councilman Vernal?
Aye.
Councilman Ayer?
Aye.
Councilman Southall?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman?
No.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, that motion carried with a vote of 5-1.
All right. Now, the next item on the agenda is, under new business, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for auditing services.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Teresa is here and can speak to this. Also, Graham also worked on that group, and Bill as well. But Lynn, why don't you let you do the short version, and if you have questions, any one of them would be pleased to ask it.
I'm good for the short version.
I'll do the short version. The short version is that periodically we need to rebid our auditing contract. It's the audit that does your audit, the school board as part of our system, and also the EDA. We went through that process in the last few months. A group of folks representing both Commissioner's Office, city staff, and school staff worked together as a selection committee, reviewed 3 very good proposals, and among those 3 good proposals recommended that we essentially send a new contract with our current auditor, Sherry Beckert, for 2 years, for 3 years, with an additional option of renewal for 2 additional years. If you like the longer version, I'm sure they would be pleased to go into that.
I think everybody understands at home and here that we need auditing services to make sure that the people's money is spent the way that we say it's spent. So that's okay. So is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract for professional auditing services with Cherry Beckert LLP with a recommendation that we change the wording in the first page of the contract. We're still referring to Poquoson Industrial Development Authority. I think it should be Economic Development Authority.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded that we approve that resolution. Questions or comments?
Who seconded?
I did.
He did. Vice Mayor. All right, so Judy, please.
Okay, Councilman Ayer.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Councilman Vernal.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
And finally, under new business is an ordinance making additional appropriations and transfers for fiscal year 2013-2014.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, the ordinance in front of you would appropriate a total amount of funds for $22,149. I'd like to just point out, as we've done every year throughout my 5 years here, and I'm sure before I got here, we seek to stretch what we're able to do with local dollars through going after grants and also in cooperation with community organizations and our citizens. There are 7 items here, and if you'll bear with me for the public, the first, appropriation of $7,357, donations to our library. Second, $2,500 to support South Lawson Park from Dominion Virginia Power. 2 grant proceeds from the state. One is for Life in $2,872, and the other is Fire Fund for $4,902. The next, we were very fortunate recently to get an individual make a significant donation in the amount of $275 to our police department. In addition to that, as you know, one of the things that we take advantage of whenever we can is asset forfeiture money. $674 is requested to be appropriated from that. And lastly, I'm very pleased to highlight to you and to the community that the Poquoson Exchange Club has made a significant donation of almost $3,600 to replace the scoreboard and clock at the middle school gym. So $2,200 from 7 sources in a combination of grants and donations. This is how we're able to stretch that budget.
Thank you for highlighting that, but mostly thank you to the community organizations that help the city exceed expectations. So, is there a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt an ordinance making additional appropriations and transfers for fiscal year 2013-14.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Questions or comments of council? If not, Judy, please.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
Councilman Vernal.
Aye.
Councilman Ayer.
Aye.
Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, the motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, comments of the city manager.
I wanted first to say thank you to the council and to Mr. Norton from Extension for the comments that you provided earlier with regard to the memorial outside. It's very important to us, and thank you for your input in that, and thank you for the opportunity to share with the public what we're doing and why we're doing it. In addition to that, it was an extremely busy weekend in the city, and despite that, things throughout the city worked very well through the cooperative efforts and patience of lots and lots of folks. And I just thank the community for being a terrific joint host of a whole lot of activities this past weekend. And lastly, Mrs. Crawford sends her regrets that she was unable to be here. Her husband is away, and she had some unavoidable family commitments that she had to do this evening.
Thank you for mentioning that. I should have mentioned that at the beginning.
She also asked me to express to you that she shares the frustration of that chart. And also it looks forward to working with you all on whatever can be done to support the school division in the face of that. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Final comments. We'll start the other end. Bud?
Okay. First, I'd like to congratulate McKenna Phillips on her award. She really did a great thing. I'm sorry she had to go through that, but she demonstrated that she had learned to do some things, and she did it in a very difficult situation. I'd like to thank Dan Northam for coming out here tonight and talking to us about the memorial. I really appreciate that. And I most especially would like to thank Ms. White for coming out here and talking to us tonight. I seriously wish more citizens would take the time to come out here and participate in their city government. I think it's something that's very necessary for us to do. And Mrs. White, I'm going to tell you from a personal point of view that I don't like doing the things I'm doing. I've done several things in my life I really didn't like doing because I thought they had to be done. And I take a lot of guidance from my vice mayor. He's a very smart man. But at the same time, while we're living through this difficult time and the state's not doing their job, which is why we're having to do a lot of the things we're doing, we're living in a very safe city. We don't have the problems that a lot of other cities have with crime and theft, and we have a very good fire department that takes good care of us, and they're doing it while they're the lowest paid people doing that in the area. And I thank them for that service. You saw by the mayor's chart, which was the other one that was up there, that in the past, the city has gone down in tax rate. By doing what we're doing tonight, we most likely will not have to raise taxes next year, probably the year after next. And if our economic development plans work the way we hope they work, if we do bring in more boats, if the new businesses do in fact spring up, and the revenue from commercial businesses come in, we do know that we have a mixed-use space that's supposed to break ground in July, and that will bring in more commercial business. It'll also have more development for homes. If that pays off the way we plan for it to pay off, which we're paying for in the near term, then you saw on that chart the tax rates went down before. If I'm here, I promise it'll go back down again. We won't take that money and just say, okay, now we have extra money.
Vice Mayor.
Okay. He said smart, but I'll talk to him later about what he meant.
I don't remember
What I've noticed is you pilots stick together.
We are supporting the schools. We are operating the city, and it does cost money to do both of those things. And I agree with Councilman Southall. This is not easy to do, but it needs to be done. It's a great place to live. And that's about all for tonight.
Okay. Councilman Eric.
No comments.
Okay. Councilman Green.
I'll try to be brief. Ms. White, I'd rather call you Monica, but I don't want to take offense. I appreciate y'all coming out. I really do. And like Bud said, we struggled long and hard with that boat tax. And the things that kept recurring were the people that supported it and knew what would happen have been right so far. They said the boats would come to the marinas. They have. The ancillary businesses have come, and they also promised that if we do away with the boat tax, the boat dealers will come. And at the business luncheon Friday, they announced that the first boat dealer has come to this city. So even though we don't have a boat tax, when he sells one of those boats, we're going to receive quite a bit of sales tax. So it was an economic driver that we felt like had to be done. We weren't picking and choosing who has to pay taxes and who doesn't, because believe me, I would never do that. But this was an economic development situation that is paying off. And as long as it does, we'll stay that way. If it ever stops paying off, we'll go back to the boat tax. The other things I'd like to personally thank Randy and Chief Robert Holloway. Saturday night, I was made aware of an emergency situation that could have turned into a total disaster, and I found out about it about 9:45 Saturday night. I called Randy, and within 15 minutes, the situation was resolved. The person was saved a lot of pain and suffering, and I appreciate it.
You're quite welcome, sir.
The other thing is the Heritage Park that was proposed years ago and it's kind of gone dormant. two residents, Allison Elfirth and Carol Mann, contacted me a couple of months ago and wanted to reinstate a committee to try to get that finally accomplished. And I think we're going to do it. The monument will be in the Messick area, I hope. That's still not fully decided, but should be. That's where it should be. They're going to have several fundraisers, the first of which is May the 1st. They'll be at the Surf's Up, and they're going to sell carnations, 3 for $10, to go into a wreath, and they'll be floating a wreath to honor the 42 identified watermen that have died plying the waters and doing their job. And also to remind the citizens of the food drive, the city food drive, May 19th through 23rd. We'll visit all 4 schools, and I think the order is high school, primary, elementary, and middle. Is that correct? And then finish up Friday at the Farm Fresh. So please support that. It's a very, very worthwhile endeavor. Thank you.
Councilman Bernal.
To repeat something that I said earlier this evening in the work session, everybody knows taxes are always too high. If you live in Williamsburg with one of the lowest tax rates in the state, they're too high. If you live in Portsmouth with one of the highest tax rate in the state, but the lowest per capita income, it is surely too high. It's just a fact of life. Nobody likes taxes. Nobody likes it, and we certainly, I think, obviously don't like to have to do it, but the principal responsibility we have is to maintain the fiscal integrity of the city. And I think that's what this budget will do. Certainly want to thank Randy and the staff for putting together a budget that accomplishes that, and look forward to hopefully getting ourselves on solid ground where future increases will not be necessary.
Okay, thank you. And I have nothing to add this evening. I think I've said my piece. And I appreciate council's work this evening, and I look forward to 2 weeks from tonight getting this behind us. All right, so let me see.
Motion for adjournment.
Motion for adjournment. No no closed session.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
Motion made and seconded.
For that.
And Judy, I'm not asking for any comments of council.
Councilman Ayer. Aye. Councilman Southall.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Freeman.
Aye.
Councilman Bernal.
Aye.
Councilman Green.
Aye.
And Mayor Hunt.
Aye.
Motion carried by a vote of 6-0.
Okay, we are adjourned.